Hi, I'm Katie Ryan, Director of Sustainability at GreenBiz. Joining me are comedian Stuart Goldsmith and climate literacy advocate Michelle Lee. Welcome to the part of GreenBiz Net Zero where we look at the issues by blending science, humor, and practicality. You're going to come away from this with new perspectives, language to use with your team when you're having hard conversations about dynamic issues related to climate, and hopefully some laugh endorphins. So let's get into it. First up, this quote from Greta. What do we think?
I've got as far as reading the first sentence, a reminder that people in power don't need conferences. And I think that is a very bold way to kick off our section of your conference. But it does beg the question, who are the people in power?
And have those people read the IPCC report and know what climate change actually is and how fast it's coming?
Yeah, deal with that, Katie. Answer those two questions succinctly.
You know, I'm really here to ask questions more than give answers. And kudos for Greta to holding us to a high bar for reading the IPCC report and also knowing that we're the ones who are the ones in power. Let's see what else we got.
We've won our case against the UK government's inadequate net zero strategy. Now, I am in the UK and from the UK, and I'm very happy with anyone bringing any case against the UK government and winning it.
So are you're off to the side there of this picture, Stu?
Yeah. So I'm holding the enormous postcard. And as I said to my friends here, if you write a big enough postcard, you will get results.
I mean, the good news here is this was not the last thing that the government decided to do over there. Looks like they also put tighter limits on industrial power and aviation emissions.
Do we believe them? I think that's the question. Definitely what we need is for governments to put limits on things. But what it worries me is that they will put those limits and then weasel out, which is why it's so exciting that people with their big postcard have managed to try and hold them to account.
Yeah, I'm curious what limiting means. Are they actually capping emissions? Are they putting a tax? And what about our food and agriculture industry, which makes up almost 30% of global emissions? There's a stat floating around that aviation emissions are 2.5%. So are we placing these tighter limits on the right places? I think we need to ask that.
Let's get into some carbon neutral work. Carbon neutral, different than net zero, but very popular label to apply. Thoughts?
I mean, to the consumer, it just means a signal that they're doing something that's good for the planet. And I don't want to discourage companies from doing that, because I think what the most important thing about this headline is that companies know that consumers care and they want to show consumers that they're doing something. And so to everyone who says to me, does the individual matter? Absolutely, yes. Can we give companies good guidelines to show that they're actually doing something good?
Yes. Yes, I don't know. I think we need to pay close attention to what the companies are doing, because I feel like there is a pretty sizable history, like the duration of my life at least, at which companies have felt comfortable obfuscating their actual progress with language, because there are so many accurate and conflicting types of language that you can use. Things can be carbon or climate neutral, or carbon or climate positive, or carbon or climate negative, and there's an ambiguity between them on the part of the consumer. So that ambiguity lets certain companies advertise stuff as having carbo positive, neg neutrality, and what we'll go, oh well, that must be good then, and what they really mean is we don't know what we're talking about and we hope you don't check.
Sometimes when people write things down, then they write things down smaller later.
I sort of sympathize in a way, because as soon as you make any kind of a commitment, you make yourself vulnerable. Like there are commitments in my life that I've tried to make regarding the climate, where I've thought, okay, I'm going to say to myself, no more single-use coffee cups ever in my life. And then 3 days later, I get caught going, oh no, it's just before a gig and I need a coffee. I can't not have the coffee because the people need me to be awake for the jokes. And then suddenly I've got a clash between my pledges to myself and the reality of my life.
Well, Stu, I'm going to send you a reusable coffee mug from Amazon.
I would love to tell you that I don't get through 5 or 6 reusable coffee cups a year, because I lose them and I break them, and I've got a brilliant elephant box one, a little metal one, and I'm on my 3rd lid. I just keep losing lids. I might as well be throwing lids away because I don't know where the lids are.
These are the kinds of trade-offs that we're talking about. We've talked a bit about how confusing net zero can be. And if we are confused, we ought to be confused. To me, the interesting part about this report that was put out was that it took an entire team of educated climate scientists to evaluate only 25 companies' commitments to the climate. And it's a very long document and it's a very rigorous process. And just curious thoughts on the rigor required to look at an organization's climate goals and climate pledges to know if they're in fact credible.
I mean, the thing is, like, I don't know about, I've never investigated the climate pledges of a specific organization, but I have done the washing up. And sometimes when I've done the washing up, I've done it deliberately badly so that I wouldn't get asked to do the washing up again. So I think the danger is when people are making their climate pledges and then when they investigate, when they assess them within the organization, what's the incentive for them to be really rigorous? Because if they find out, if they do their job properly and examine all their upstream and downstream carbon intensity, then, you know, it's almost like the better your team is, the more problems they generate. So you might say the best way, from the point of view of a CEO of a company, the best way to determine the net zero commitments of my own business is to do it really badly. Like, don't dig too deep. You haven't got much to worry about.
I mean, I think incentive is the key word here, Stu, right? A CEO sitting in seat right now, do they really care about what's going to happen 7 years later on a climate goal? This is not a financial goal, right? There's no direct impact to their pocket unless there are incentives. So there are companies out there that have tied employee performance, financial bonuses, executive financial bonuses to environmental outcomes. I don't know how many of those companies are on the list here, but that's a really good way to actually make sure companies will fulfill their goals and will set realistic goals. We have to tie it back to these incentives. And I don't know that most companies are doing that today.
That's incredibly encouraging to hear. I love the idea of that. And I love the idea of a CEO hesitating just before they write it into policy. Like, oh God, have we really got to do this? I'm just going to oh no, oh God, there it is. Okay, now everything we have to do, all of our, I mean, that's brilliant. That's exactly how it should work. But I just hope that we can get there in time, because I can imagine the glacial pace at which that idea could then pass through how companies work and get to the very top and actually get okayed.
To me, the good news is that if we can have urgency around meeting financial goals, it means that urgency exists. Folks know how to hustle. So this is an example of integrate. So if you're thinking about the 4 steps of net zero: measure, reduce, offset, integrate, this integration piece with goals and financial compensation at an employee level is exactly that piece that ties it all together so that we are all looking at this problem from a holistic place. Michelle, Stu, thank you for joining me today as we walked through some of the latest news on net zero. I don't know about you guys, I definitely came away with a joy of reading the news together in community, as well as some great angles to look at these really complex problems. This is the kind of language and questions that we can bring back to our own organizations as we try to drive change. And it's okay to have fun in this environment. I think people will show up when there is fun to be had. And I am glad the 3 of us showed up here. So thank you very much.